Right, okay, what I've done now is I've basically let this lot soak overnight, and I put the jets in a little egg cup with some vinegar and let them soak overnight. And also a good idea to unblock jets, I found that I've used guitar strings. As you can see, I've got a packet of guitar strings here. And if you find the finest one I found is a 0.3mm, which is the first E string, I think, and I was able to get into both of the jets and just not wiggling them about, just literally just ease it through there, just to clean the little ways in the jets. And all these jets now are fully clean. Plus I'll give them a blowout with the air gun again. So as you can see from the float bowl, that looks absolutely fantastic. That's back to brand new again. The carburettor, what I've done, as I say, I've blown all this out with an air gun as well, down all the holes in the jets and the passageways. Plus leaving that soaking, as you know, that's the best I can do. I can't do any more than what I've done to it. If it's not going to work, then obviously it'll be another carb. But you remember the state of that when I first stripped it down. I don't know if you can see there now, look, all that stuff is all gone, all that corrosion is all gone from there. That was all in there and jammed in there. This is the little needle valve. I don't know if you can see this on there. Let's try and get this as close as we can. If I get behind it and bring it in, maybe. Hold on. Now, that's not 100%, but I don't know if you can see there. That's the best I could do with that. And there's a little plunger on the top there, which needs to go up and down, which it basically does. So I'm hoping that I'm going to get away with that. You remember that was totally corroded into the top of the actual valve, so that's the best I could do with that anyway. So I'm going to give it a go. I mean, if it doesn't work, then obviously we'll have to try and source another one. I have had a look online, and there's very few spares available for these carbs. I've not asked about a new one. There is someone in this country that does replacement parts for these little generators. So I know that possibly if this is a problem, I can actually exchange it for another unit. I don't know what the price is going to be. I would imagine this is a carburettor for an unusual unit. It's going to be pretty expensive, so we'll have to wait and see. So what I'm going to do now basically is to put the carb back together and basically put the carb back on the unit, and we'll have to set the carb up as well. So I'm going to do that now. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do is to put back the idle jet. And all you do with that is basically just drop it in and tighten it up. It doesn't have to be too tight, you just nip it up basically. So screw it right the way in, and once it bottoms out, just give it a little tweak, and that should hold it in place. You've then got the throttle stop screw. Now with this throttle stop screw, you don't really want it to do anything, because the actual throttle is controlled by the governor arm. So all you're basically doing is just pushing that through, if you can see that, until it just comes through the body, but it doesn't actually do anything. So if I release that, it's only literally just, I don't know if you can see that, can you? It's only just sticking through, so it's not actually doing it. If you worm that in too far, that will bugger up what the governor does, so you don't want to really be messing with that. And then you've got the mixture screw, which goes back into this hole here, and as I said, that's the one with a pointed end on it. Right, so you wind that right the way in till it can't go anymore. That's there. I'm not forcing anything. When it's in, you then basically wind it out nearly 2 complete turns. So that's half, 1, 1.5, nearly 2. So that should be near enough set correctly for the mixture. I then drop the little needle valve hanging on the float like that, turn it upside down, and then drop that needle back into, you can see that, into its little chamber, which is easier said than done. And once that's in there, replace the pin for the float. That should just squeeze in there nicely. You remember that it was totally seized up before, as you remember. So that's that. And then we finish off with the main jet going in. And I've then got to put on the bottom part of the float bolt. Now that goes on with the screw, drain screw, adjacent with the hose for the fuel fill. Don't forget the washer on the bolt. And hopefully we have one refurbished carburettor. Now, as you can look there, how clean it is now compared to what it was when it first went in to the ultrasonic bath. They do a very good job. You can probably leave them in there up to 20 minutes to half an hour, and you know you will get rid of all this stuff, all the crap that gets in these little joints under there, which you really can't get to. And that's the benefit of having a sonic cleaner for this sort of thing. And I think you'll agree that's in a far better condition. I'm just hoping that all the air fuel ways and all the inside channels and all that have all been cleaned out. So there's only one way to find it out, is to put it on to try it. So that's what we're going to do now. Now on the actual shaft that comes out, there was a little washer which has to go back on before you put the governor arm back on. And it's best to put the governor arm on like this, because it's pretty much impossible to get the arm back on with the carb in situ. So just make sure that gasket's okay there, which it is in this situation. So once we push that on, just make sure that that linkage is operating freely as it is there. That pipe can sometimes bind up, so just be careful of that. Now what we've got to do now is to correctly adjust this governor arm position with relative to this crank sticking out here, and then we tighten the nut up and that should be it set. Right, but before we do this up, what I'm going to do first is just to reattach the governor spring. So here it is there, if you remember. That arm is in there. I don't know if you can see that, it's not light enough, but there's an arm there with a little hole in it. If I just lift it up a little bit, you might be able to see it. There we go. So if I just get me pointed nose pliers, which we've just done, and then hook it back through the governor arm. So what we've got now is that spring is now obviously back on, pulling that body in its correct starting position. So as I mentioned before, what we've got to do now is to set the governor arm, and you do that by this flat here on this shaft coming out. It's got a flat, and I don't know whether you can see or not, but if I just grab hold of that flat, it's got a sort of a very short movement there, and that is the adjustment on the actual governor arm itself. So to adjust this governor arm, what you need to do is you need to grab hold of the flat, turn the governor arm shaft clockwise as far as it can go, make sure that is fully over there, and once you've done that, you then tighten up this nut, and that should be it in the correct position. So I'm just going to do that now. Now again, you don't have to do this nut up very, very tight, because it's literally just a pinch bolt. So it's just a little tap, little pinch, and that is it. And what you've got there is the governor arm is now adjusted and fully operational. So what we're going to do now is to put the air filter box back on. Now one thing just to note here is that this little plastic pipe that we've threaded through, there's a little sort of, let me just point to it, a little channel which it can lay in there. It just sits under this little clip there, so make sure that's in there, because when you put the air filter box back on, that's the actual hole that it goes through, so that will just keep everything lined up. So that's the situation with that. Now this plate here, basically what that plate is for is that when you actually locate that plate, it basically stops the air filter from getting sucked into the engine. So obviously the air filter, when it goes on, will sit upon that, and it stops you from the air filter from sucking it in. So with the air filter in place, just click the lid back on, and we can now put our two bolts in the bottom of the engine. So I'll just lift that screwdriver up there and drop that back down. So So all we've got to do now is to put the cases back in place and connect everything up, like the leads, put the fuel line back on, connect up the choke cable, and I will just check the spark plug as well while I'm here, because obviously that's not been out, so we don't know what sort of condition that's in, and then we'll try and give it a fire up. Right, let's put a drop of petrol in it. Don't go too mad in case I have to empty it all out again. Right, we definitely got petrol in there now. I'm just having a little look around it, make sure nothing's leaking out. Put that cap back on. Now again, it's a bit wobbly because one of the legs has come adrift. Now, as I say, it might not start the first time because I've got to let some fuel get into that carburetor. One thing I forgot to do before I try and start it was check the plug. So I'm going to do that right now. After all, I don't want to be pulling and pulling if the plug's fouled up. It's a waste of time. Plug looks fine. I'm just going to put the plug in now and just give it a couple of turns. Just make sure we've got a spark. Right, I've just turned it over, we've got a spark. I'll leave that side cover off for a minute, don't really matter, in case I have to take it off again. What I'm going to do, just to try and give it a helping hand, is just to get some easy start in the air intake. Let's see if we can start it like that. Just trying. Right. It tried to start when I squirted easy start into the carburetor, but rather than me carry on pulling and pulling, what I've actually done is I undone the little bleed screw at the bottom of the float bowl. No fuel's coming out. I've then taken the fuel line off that enters the carburetor, and even though I've got about a quarter of a tank of fuel in here, there's no fuel coming out, so there's obviously a blockage in the fuel line somewhere, so that is my problem, so I'm going to have to investigate that now. Right, okay, after a little bit more investigation, this is the culprit. This was hidden inside the red side casing, which you see me put back on. It's actually the bottom, on the bottom of the fuel tank. There is a tap there, and obviously fuel isn't getting from the fuel tank down the supply lead, so I've had to take it off, and I'm going to have to strip it down and see what the problem is. It's probably all gummed up in here, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to remove the hose off of the tap, as I just want to see if I can find if there's a blockage in the hose, or is it in the actual tap itself. Right, so the tap is now in the on position, and I'm going to just give that a quick wipe before I blow down that little spout. That's blocked. Check the hose. Clear as a whistle. So it looks like our petrol valve is knackered. Yep, either position the hose is blocked. So I don't know whether this can be stripped down, but I'm going to have a look anyway, so I'm going to do that now. Well, I'm not going to try and pull that filter off or disturb it. I'm sure it should come off. So what I'm going to do basically is just, I'm going to heat some water up, put it in this ultrasonic cleaner, and see what that does to it. I'm just going to leave it in there for about 20 minutes, so I'm going to do that now. Right, here we go. Back from the blaster, and just to show you that, there we go, straight through now. Works a treat. So I'm now going to fit this, and we're going to try it again. I won't show you that because it's a bit boring. Right, here we go. I'm not going to put the back cover on yet in case there's any leaks or anything, so choke. How about that? That's not too bad at all, is it? That started first time we're running. Just let it tick over for a minute. How about that? Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a light bulb just to see whether or not we are charging. Well, there you go. Well, I'm pretty sure that carburettor and that fuel cap tap would have been nigh on impossible to repair without the ultrasonic cleaner. So it just shows you, don't go ham-fisted in there and try to stick things in and repair something, especially a delicate thing like a carburettor, for example. There are ways and methods of doing things, and I found that the ultrasonic cleaner in this situation has actually saved me having to buy a new carburettor. You did see the state of it. With a little bit of fault diagnosis afterwards, we found out the gummed up fuel tap, and we've got over that problem again using the ultrasonic cleaner. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this series of videos. Speak to you again soon. Bye bye for now.